vote. We have Mike. Oh,
Mike Naughton,
let me
present.
say it again. Wait a minute, they didn't hear that, Mike. Let me say it again. Calling the Sixtown Regional Planning Board meeting to order as we continue our work from the December 6th meeting to finish that agenda, or I'm calling it back into session. And at 6:36, and we'll do a roll call vote. Mike Noddington.
Mike Naughton, present.
Naughton.
I like Nottington. It's very festive.
Yeah, it sounds like Robin Hood. Alan Genevieve's here. Greg,
Here.
Karen,
Here.
and Deb Loomer. Jane Dutcher
Here.
and Lynn Reynolds
Present.
and Bill Toom
Yes.
and Christy Solda.
Here.
All right, and if anyone else joins us as we see them, we can just note the time that they come in. Karen, did you have your hand up on something?
I do. Because I volunteered to do the December 6th minutes, am I also liable for tonight's minutes? Because it's the same meeting.
How that?
Lucky you. Aaron.
Am I? Really? Okay. I'll
What
see
made you think you were liable for tonight? I thought Greg was back to doing that for this meeting.
Well, it's a continuation. I would love for him to do it. That would be great. Yeah,
Oh, I
would-
see.
I will just do the 6th.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. I think Greg wants to. Don't you want to offload the entire responsibility of taking minutes, Greg?
No, not necessarily. It's fine. I mean, I'll get around over the break to doing the September 22nd that I agreed to do, and then I could do the tonight's if you know, and add them to Karen.
I will do mine
Yeah.
January 1st as well.
Greg, did you by any chance write down, I tossed out that piece of paper that I wrote notes on. That I said November 11/22. I couldn't remember the date.
Probably the 15th is my guess.
Yeah,
October
I've got it. October 18th, I believe.
18th. Okay, thank you.
I don't think so. I think we had a meeting on the 15th.
Okay, whatever. Yeah. October something th. Thank you.
Since I'm doing the minutes for tonight, I make the motion to adjourn.
Greg, you gotta be careful because that motion is not debatable.
I take it back. I'm sorry.
I'll
Jane
withdraw
has to
my
take back her
second.
He's ill.
Thank you, Jane. I was gonna say,
Just a tad.
yeah, that's funny. And Raina just joined us. We just started, Raina. Hi. Can we, is there?
Can
someone
I,
just so that-
while we're talking about minutes, if this is my last meeting, I will not be doing the October 5th minutes.
Right, and I did pass that on to Jennifer, that it would be a good opportunity that for her to, you know, Greg can show her how to get into the website, look at where our minutes are, and actually watch the meeting for October 5th, and then, you know, do the minutes. So so I made her aware of that, Jane, as you asked me to.
Okay.
However, since we're on this, I've got Jane is Jennifer will be October 5th, and we have October 18th was Deb Loomer, right? And then there was November. Who had the November?
Steve?
Steve was
Steve.
November.
Mhm.
Okay. What was that? November
15th.
15th. And then we're caught up, right? We didn't have one. We didn't have one after that because then we had our town meetings. We had the 18th or was with
Yeah.
Gil Montague, and then, yeah, so then, and then we pick up to where we are December 6th and December 13th, which is Karen and
Mhm.
Greg. Okay. Just so we have a kind of a record of that, those that are watching, it makes it in the minutes again. All right, so we can just focus on a couple of things and maybe have an early meeting unless there's, lots of dialogue that needs to happen. Had we completed the, I think we were having a conversation around, well, let me back up to item 6. So there are some competing things that are happening in Pioneer that came up. So I'm going to coordinate a different date to be talking with the kids. But I am in the process still of trying to arrange a meeting with Gil Montague. Found that Christopher Barnes is the principal. And so he's reached out. There was a Beth Fornan, I think, something like that, also was on the email along with Brian. So I think they're going to see what they can do prior to the break. If not, it would happen after the break. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. I'm not
I
sure if that will
think-
happen before the break.
We were on to Roman numeral 7 at the end of the meeting.
Okay, does that tie into so we pretty much nailed down the general scope of the amended grant we'll be working on. And we got to get that to Diane. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Karen. So the, I guess a general conversation in terms of the next steps would be this is another, major outreach to finally be able to get out and talk to groups and explain and try to have time to, get some feedback. One of the things we'll want to do toward the end of our outreach will be to loop back to the select boards because they will have an opportunity to have heard from their various stakeholders in their communities. So that would be on the tail end of an activity. And I think the other piece was we were thinking of hiring a publicity person or firm or whatever if we could, to really kind of move that along in terms of how to do the best reach out to our senior citizens and to our community and see what expertise they may offer so that we can have some assistance in promoting the work that we've been doing, or sharing, I should say, the work that we've been doing. So that would be an activity we'd be working in concert if we're successful in finding someone that specializes in that area and responds to an RFQ. The communication with the parents, I was thinking that we'd be reaching out through the principals and using the PTOs and PTAs as forums for the parents, and probably looping back for the staff at some point. Jane, I see your hand up.
Yeah, it is up. I think we should contact the select boards early at the beginning of this process to see what groups in their town they think we should meet with. And also to find
Okay.
out if they have any input after the meetings that we had in November.
Mhm.
Do they want to sit down with us again now? Do they have anything to offer? Who do they think we should see? I think it's important to keep them high up in the loop.
Yeah,
Yeah, other thoughts? People agree with that? That seems to make a lot of sense.
I
asking
very
them.
much agree with that.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
I would
right.
say that, sorry, Alan.
No, go ahead, Deb.
Yeah, I think that would be the next step. And then certainly the next step after that would be to nail down dates that the presentation would be given to the school committees Because I think that's the next level after the select board, I would say.
Right.
Level is your school committees, and just get dates on that down. And then once you get those dates, I think we just need to kind of prioritize, even before we hear from the select board, what comes after school, what comes after school boards, who's the next group of people? Does it go to community? Does it go to parents first before it goes to the overall community? I mean, just things like that, that I think the timeline just needs to be in order and not necessarily have the dates,
Right.
which you have to work on, but just what is the order of what happens?
So let me ask you this before I move off this, Deb, just to stay on that, and then I'll go to Greg and then to Karen. If we would identify whom we think we would want to go out, and have the select board add to that and decide, like you say, what do they think the sequence should be, then we've gone in kind of proactive, and here's what we're thinking, but we don't know necessarily if we've captured everyone that you think we should be meeting with, or the order that you think would be important.
Right.
Steve just joined us at 6:47. So is that going along with your thinking?
Yeah, so that's what I was basically thinking. I think we need to have the plan, and when we go to the select boards and say, this is what we feel our next steps are. Do you have anything to add after our last meeting? Do you have any people in your town that you feel we are not contacting? But I think we need to kind of have the plan first before it's
Right.
just opened up.
All right, so let's add to that for a minute then. There's the general community, and I'm not sure, I'll just use it at that for now. I'm not sure who that, if you break it down. You have the parents, you have the teachers. How do you have the senior citizens? How do you?
Senior centers.
This, in both communities, have a senior center?
Gil goes to.
Well, you've got
Each-
more than 2 senior centers.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, so senior citizens, keep going. Other groups. Karen?
Well, I just wanted to say 2 things. First of all, I think it's really important to get to the school committees as soon as possible. I agree with Deb on that. And I don't know whether you would like to relate with this to this committee, that somewhat tense moment at our school committee meeting last week when you talked with the superintendent about her absence from any meetings to which she'd been invited to, and just, people on our school committee particularly need to know more. So I would say that needs to be a priority.
I would like to hear about that.
Hey, Alan, I'll just quickly.
Yes.
I'll just quickly interject before you go to that. We had a discussion previously, which I think is a good idea, which is we should plan on whatever public meetings we're going to have in the near future, that we try to have them at the elementary schools. We've focused a lot on having meetings at the high school and middle school, but I think to draw in parents that would be potentially actually really affected would be those that are at the elementary schools. So
I think that's a good suggestion. We also should, I think, go to the school committee of Irving, the Irving School Committee, and their parent teacher group as well. Even though right now they're tuitioning in, if it's a merged district, they should really be up to date on what's happening. So we should include them. Any other comments on the groups before we go on there? I wonder if we should be asking the school committee that question as well. Are there
Yes,
groups
so
that they
Alan, I
think-
just wanted, are you able to hear me?
Oh, yes, thanks, Ray.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to jump in with, the PTOs, you don't actually need to go through the principals to contact the PTOs because they're a parent organization, they're an independent. They support the schools, but you don't need you really should just you can deal directly with the PTOs. And that would, you would be able to access the elementary parents that way.
But I hate to start with but, so let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Would it be necessary, wouldn't it be necessary to have the letter and the invitation and that kind of correspondence go out to the principal's office?
No, because the PTOs have their own email lists and their own
Oh,
membership lists. Yeah, so they would be able, they have their own, and they aren't they aren't constrained by the district's policies in terms of having outside groups come in and talk. You know, fundraising activities, that sort of thing, exist separately because they're their own 503(c)(b).
I mean,
Or
the-
50
okay, and
whatever.
meeting with teachers, would that be going through the principals, like in the respective buildings?
That would, the teachers would, but the parents, if you contact the presidents of the PTOs, they can invite you to their meeting and you can present at the PTO meetings.
And then.
Well, a
the
question? I'm just thinking from a public relations standpoint, would it make sense to kind of give the principals a heads up?
I think that's up to the PTO president to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that, Raina. They are
Mhm.
independent.
Yeah. And they usually will share their agenda with the principals. So it's not like the principals would
Right.
be left out of the loop. I know at NES, you know, Megan Damaris always attended the PTO meetings. We didn't always have a teacher representative, but the principal would almost always attend.
Karen, what structure is in place for the high school? What
Yeah.
is there I don't know what they'd be called.
I'm not sure what has happened now because our two principal leaders of the parent organization are either, one is passed on and one has just retired. So I don't know if it is even functioning at this point.
Okay.
But the one who just, the one who retired, you mean retired from the organization or retired from?
From the organization, and I honestly don't know if it's been operating. I've been away
What
for 8
school is
years.
that?
Yeah.
At Pioneer.
What school? That's the Pioneer? Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Mhm.
Are there? and I'm
But
just
Kathy Hawkins
going-
Harrison would know.
Okay. I
Hey,
don't
Alan,
wanna, yes, I see Steve joined us.
he has his
I
hand
don't
up.
know when, and he has his hand up. Hi, Steve.
Hi there, everybody. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve Ellis, and thank you for letting me join your meeting. I'm the town administrator in Montague. And I just, as we were talking about, outreach to particular groups, full disclosure, my wife is the student services director in the Gil Montague Regional Schools. And so I know that it is extremely important to make sure that we engage both our, students who may have disabilities, and they have regular meetings as well, probably in both districts and certainly in Gil Montague, finding a way to communicate adequately with English language learners families, new Americans families would be important as well. And I would say that, in the latter category, there's really tremendous participation at events. And so, I know that it's a complex communication plan and I don't want to add extra steps, but I just wanted to offer that as a thought.
That's a very, very good thought. So you're talking about the PAC, the Parent Advisory Council that are
I am.
required in regional school districts for special education. And they can be quite active in the different schools, very helpful.
They can, and I just think generally making sure that people understand the potential impact and benefits to families whose students are receiving special services is just of particular importance.
Mhm.
And they're a large
Good thought.
segment of our school populations.
There are.
All right, thank you, Steve. Yeah, very good. Our list has gotten pretty comprehensive. This is great. Other thoughts on the reach out?
Alan,
Well, just a
Yes.
question.
I was gonna say, I will get, if they exist, I will get the names of the high school, middle school, Sheffield, Hillcrest, and Gill Elementary School PTOs.
Oh,
They
great.
might not exist, but I will contact someone in those schools and see if they can give me any information. I will get that to you.
Thank you. That's terrific. Okay, we got a lot of great ideas. These are the kind of things that we can specifically
Okay.
mention when we're doing an RFQ
Okay.
to, you know, these are some of the reach out efforts that we hope to make. So they have a good idea of the scope of it. Mike,
Alan, question. We've mentioned a number of groups in both districts, 6 towns, or at least 5 towns. How long do we think this is going to take? Realistically, to arrange all those meetings and collect feedback and analyze it? Maybe let's start with just arrange all those meetings. I mean, how many meetings a week are we gonna have? And how many meetings total are we predicting that we want to do?
okay, so these are meetings that, you know, we're involved, but I don't see us as a planning board attending all of these meetings. I see this as.
Well, but somebody's
part
gonna
of-
attend them, right?
Yeah, I'm finishing. I see this as sort of mini hands, make things light, and when we get maybe some expertise from the publicity expert, I'm not sure what to call them right now, and the facilitator and their ideas on, you know, developing a schedule. I would think this would be a January, February, March, a 3-month endeavor that multiple things would be going on in that effort. And the facilitator would be coordinating a host of meetings or facilitators if we need to have, you know, more than one involved in this. And then we would sort of, like we did before, have some of us attend.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get it clear in my head what is envisioned here. So the plan, as you're presenting it, is to hire a facilitator to basically make all these things happen. And then members of the STRPB will be involved as they wish, essentially.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair, and nor does the facilitator. I like the way that this was done, in that it was a meeting with the facilitator or facilitators, depending on how this is divvied up, where we collectively developed a you know, a calendar, because we have the contacts. You know, we as Deb pointed out, for example, if she were to get us the contacts of who to talk to and how that can be done, that goes a long way for saving time for the facilitator and doing the outreach and you know, and helping to organize it and setting this up. Bill, your hand is up. I can come back to you, Mike. Bill?
Yeah, 2 things. One, I think that to simplify stuff and to appreciate all the different points of view as to who to contact for the various groups, I do think that the principal is certainly not out left field when it comes to what the PTO is doing. Even though I understand they're a separate organization, blah, blah, blah. But to start with, I think we need to simplify some of these approaches And starting with the principals is a good one, and all the other ones are excellent too, but who's gonna do it all? And then to Mike's point, Mike really asked, when do you think this is gonna start? And it's gonna start in January, but that's, if you haven't even put out the request for a quote yet,
Mhm.
then somebody isn't gonna step on board January 1, and we're gonna be firing off these things throughout the month of January. That's not realistic. And I think that in real terms, you're talking about springtime. I don't know that. And if we can accelerate, that's fine. But it may not be until February, March that some of this stuff really starts to happen. That's just my opinion. And that's all
No,
I
I-
have to say.
yeah. No, I think you're right on, Bill, on that. When I say start, I'm talking about start this process with because we haven't even done the amendment yet. So there's the RFQs and then starting the process is in January where we're having people deciding on who we're going to have. And you're right, even though if you look at our calendar, it kind of truncates this even more. We have 18 months to get a lot of information. It might take us 5 or 6, maybe even 7 months to get out and do this round and get feedback and get some reports back. And then have that conversation amongst ourselves. Are we deciding to go forward? And then at that point, we start working on what a regional agreement would look like, which facilitates a whole bunch of other meetings we would need to do. I'm going to ask Christy to go back to Deb Loomer. Christy?
So I have contact information for Berniston's PTO, Northfield PTO. I'm not sure about Pioneer Valley if they do have a PTO. And I know that teachers along with the principals attend the PTO meetings monthly.
Okay. Could you, the people that have contact, who said, Deb Loomer, you said you had some contacts.
I'll the Gil Montague urban ones.
So if you were to, if you guys were willing to put those together with the names and their position and a number of how to reach them, that would be really helpful in, getting that information together and then see who we're missing for other contacts like senior citizens and so forth. That'd be a good start there. Jane, if you know who the people are and the different, you mentioned there might be 3 of them. If you know who the people would be that you could give us their name and number, how to reach them and so forth. All that information would be good preliminary information to help us to start to look at what information that we need. Deb?
Ellen, I don't think we need to wait for a facilitator to get to school board
No.
and give them the slide
Agreed.
presentation. I think that's, I think the facilitator is truthfully a great idea for a lot of groups out there who we don't know how to contact and after we talk to the select boards. But I certainly don't feel like I want to wait until the facilitator is on board to start all of these meetings. I think we need to, you've met with the select boards, you've showed them the presentation. I think we need to move while things are moving. And if we come to a dead standstill again while we wait for this facilitator, then I think you lose momentum in the train of thought that's in people's heads. I mean, you've done it. I don't know what groups you feel more comfortable with doing without the facilitator. Certainly some of the public meetings, but to a PTO group, to be honest with you, I would think you would give the same presentation and answer the same questions as you did at the select board meetings. And I don't know that, but I just don't want to see us come to another standstill. And once again, certainly the school boards,
Yes.
somewhere on a January agenda has to happen.
Yeah, I agree. No question. We can do the select boards to get their feedback. We can do the school committee And I think we can do some of the outreach to the PTOs. I think we're in the best position. But there are others, oh, we didn't mention students, by the way, because that's a huge one, reaching out to the students and soliciting their feedback. Let me write that down. Greg, so I agree. We can start the ball moving and don't have to wait for a facilitator for this preliminary work. Greg, you keep moving around on me. You had your hand up. I thought,
No,
there you are.
Every time, it's when someone puts their hand up digitally, it's gonna move the screens around. No, I just want to say that I don't think we need to have a lot of meetings. I think we need well-publicized meetings and try to group more than one group. I mean, we don't need to be breaking off into a lot of meetings with small groups. Let's try to do well-publicized meetings and try to get as many groups as we can to fewer meetings, but more meaningful meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Jane?
I remember that last week we were discussing whether we were talking about one or more, I don't know if you want to call them facilitators, one or more RFQs. And what they might cover, what they might do for us. And I don't think we made a decision on that. If we did, I don't remember it, or maybe I left the room when the decision was made. I have a habit of leaving the room frequently, unfortunately. So I just want to know, are we talking about one facilitator for that whole list of wants and desires, or are we talking about potentially more than one person?
Well, I think for some of the outreach, we would be talking about a facilitator, possibly two, but at least one facilitator. I think when it's a different skill set, when you're talking about pulling people from the various towns to look at what should be in a regional agreement, I think that's a whole different skill set. And so that would be a different facilitator or group that we would probably be
But
contracting
we're not ready.
with.
We're not ready for that until we have a lot more input from the public.
That's right. You asked I thought a global question of how we're
Yeah, how many?
who we might be hiring, I thought. And
That's
then
right.
potentially to get a firm to really help us to Greg's point, how do we get more information out and get people interested in attending meetings? You know, what does that look like?
But somebody
I
just
think-
said we don't need anybody to help us to go to more presentations. We can do that on our own.
No, I think,
To have a facilitator go to the select boards with us, for instance, is a total waste of money.
I agree.
And maybe even to the PTOs, it's a waste.
I think when you go to the general public, sometimes the skills that the facilitator brings, I'm not going to call them hecklers, but I'll call them hecklers. You know, when you get someone who's hogging the mic, as in one of the meetings, it's, you know, easier to have someone who's not involved with the process to make the judgment as to how to handle it, because they're an independent party.
Right.
No stake in it. And so that's what
Unbiased.
it's easier to have that facilitator there. I'm not talking, so that's when I said, I don't think you need it. You need it in certain situations. And I think that's like Alan said, you know, that's February and March, but in some of the other ones that are small, like Greg said, very small groups, probably you group together some elementary schools. I don't think that's when you need to have an independent person.
Yeah, and if I may just chime in, I mean, I think Deb's point is important, which is that we have a presentation, we have a video that is good. I think we should put that out there. I think we should get in touch with the PTOs. We should set up meetings through the elementary schools to engage parents that are coming up through their children are coming up through the system. And start there. I mean, we did this presentation to the select boards and FinComs. I think we need to move on now to the general public and do it as soon as possible, which we don't have to wait for a facilitator. We can just do the same presentation. It's really to get the information out there and set something up in January. And if we do it through the PTOs, fine, find a elementary school that we can do it, maybe, you know, one or two nights for Gilmontague, since it's a bigger, I mean, since it's, we've got, well, both actually, we probably should do maybe two elementary schools, do two in each district and set those up through, you know, maybe mid-January through early February. And just get right on it. So that it's in the public mind. I mean, that's what we really need to do next. As far as next steps after that, we can regroup, see what the general consensus is, and see if we're ready to. I mean, we can be also in contact with the select boards through that process and see how we're feeling once we hit early February in terms of, do we want to move forward with the next steps of a regional district agreement or a larger district agreement?
I would think that an email, I didn't wait to be recognized. I would
You're
think that an
recognized.
email to each select board stating what we just said. Do you have any questions? Do you have any suggestions? Who do you think we should contact in your town? I would think that can be done by an email. I don't think we have to physically go to any of their meetings to handle that. And I do agree with everybody who said we need to get into the school committee meetings, and we should send an email to the chairman of the school committees asking to be on their agenda to do this presentation.
All right, and just, I agree with, we have a lot of different perspectives all coming together, but I think it's helping to refine how we move forward, which is really good. I just want to give a statement about the benefit of a facilitator in some of our work, because I definitely agree a lot of this we can do. But one of the things, not only to Deb's point about how they can navigate some of the difficulties in an unbiased way, because, you know, if you're going to get mad at someone, it's nice. It's not somebody that, you know, is on the committee if there's, you know, issues that are trying to be resolved. But one of the things that I don't know if we have the time to do is getting this information and, you know, wrapping it up in different forms, whether they be brochures or they be, you know, reports. We need, that's where a facilitator can be really, really helpful for the information that either we're providing to them or they're involved in some of that and we're providing to, for example, the general public kind of information that they're developing a report and we're giving them information from our meetings. I think that's a major contribution a facilitator could do in a sort of a summary report of all of our findings from the various stakeholders. So, thoughts on that? Mike?
Well, I think, sir,
Well,
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Well, I guess because I agree with what Alan just said. But it does occur to me, I mean, I'm thinking myself, if I were to write this RFQ, what would I be saying? Because what I'm hearing is, well, we want to have meetings with a number of different stakeholders with more than one goal. The goal for meeting with the select boards in the beginning is to get some direction. We have different goals, meeting with some of the other groups. Some of those groups, we think a facilitator might be helpful, but we haven't, other than kind of generally defined who those groups are. So how many hours are we asking for? How many meetings are we asking for? I mean, if someone were to respond to this and they were to come up with a price for us, they need to know what they're being asked to do and to say, well, come into this process and, you know we got some work for you. We don't really know how much. It just seems a little vague to me at this point. And here we are in the middle of December. We're talking about starting this up I mean, when are we going to define what it is we're talking about? Are we going to try to nail that down tonight? Are we going to meet again in January and nail it down then? Or what? And I don't
No.
really care. I don't have a particular answer in mind, but I'm just thinking that right now, all this sounds great. And at the same time, it's all pretty vague.
Well, Mike, you do care, or you would be making such good comments. So let me just back up. I think that.
I don't have
that-
a preference.
Yeah, one of the key elements to an RFQ will be to, meetings with the planning board to, because we want to get some of their expertise to merge with ours to help develop some of these ideas in the best way possible and what ideas they may have. So Greg, we would have to get creative in terms of, there'd be probably more meetings with us than we have done in the past to make sure, we're coordinating this and getting an avenue, a pathway to feed information that we're soliciting back to a facilitator so that they're also using this to develop a final report on our behalf. So I haven't sort of crystallized my thinking and what that RFQ might look like, given the conversation that we have, but I think we can do a pretty good general idea. When we get down to how many hours do we think it would take, that's going to require a little more planning. I would want to reach out to Jake at in the Berkshires and ask specifically how successful did they think the what's the word that they use for them? The publicity firm or whatever. How many hours did they spend? What did they accomplish? And then pick and choose off that. What did we like that they did that we would want to emulate?
You mean a
and
public relations firm?
Thank you. Yeah. And then what did they do that we decide is really not suited for our planning board and our towns and how we're approaching it. So I think we'll have to do some outreach to sort of get some numbers on that. I have a sense they spent a lot on that, and I'm not planning on spending a lot on that. I think we only earmarked 5,000 for that. Bill?
I suggest that's a different conversation than talking about the facilitator, but
Yeah.
what I think about the facilitator is that we're also having two conversations, one about introducing the PowerPoint to a larger audience to get the notion out there. And then I think in subsequent meetings, you would perhaps want a facilitator. But first, we have to get more information out through the PowerPoint, which is an excellent one. And then you can worry about these other things. But just as in any meeting, you get a new idea and you have a first reading, and it's not at that meeting you decide what you're doing, but the people out in the general public need to have some idea about what it is they're supposed to be thinking about. And that's what the PowerPoint will provide, is something for people to think about, and then they can respond to that idea through a facilitator. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, because it's a two-part process. Part one is what we've been talking about, getting information out to the general public, just getting it out. Part two is then having time aside, because it doesn't usually happen at that meeting. There's a lot of information that's focused on soliciting feedback and hearing ideas. So there is two parts to that process.
But Alan,
You're right.
you're talking about
Uh,
trying to get public to a meeting. If they come to the meeting for a slide presentation, only the few will come back to another meeting to ask more questions. The majority of your questions are going to happen at that slide presentation. Just like it did for the select boards, they had the questions on their mind right then and there. They want to ask them then. They don't want to write them down, mull it over, and then want to come back. And I'm talking about the general public. I'm not talking about people who have bigger stakes in it financially or whatever. I'm talking about just some parent who says, hey, what the heck is this regional school board? I might as well go to this meeting. They go to the meeting, they generate all those questions. Like I said, I just don't see them coming back to a second meeting unless they're really invested. And I think they make up their mind right then and there, a lot of them.
So you don't think, Deb, just staying on your point, you don't think that giving the information, asking questions for clarification is one thing versus now when they have the information and they let it marinate for a while, that they're now sharing their ideas? And because I don't know if we really solicited a lot of thoughts and ideas that people had at the select board meetings. I saw that as information and a lot of good clarifying questions, but we never really solicited how they felt. So I guess I'm seeing it as a little bit of a division there. So
Okay.
that's just me. Let me ask.
Watching it back, I saw people as asking clarifying questions. They weren't given their opinions, and this is just the Bernardston one. They weren't asking, telling their opinion about it, but they were asking clarifying questions about the presentation, which would then, they would go home and mull it over and probably come to a decision at some point. Like I said, you could ask, Steve was a parent once, recently, what's his thoughts on, would he have gone back? Do most parents want to go back for a second time? Or is it a one-shot deal, and the message you give at that one-shot deal has to be on point, accurate, or whatever?
Yeah, and we did hear people were filling out a survey when they didn't have enough about it. And maybe if we're doing this differently, we could make sure they have all the information and the questions and then administer a survey and figure out how we can get a great response to that. So we have a lot of hands. We have Greg, we have Mike, and we have Jane, I think in that order.
Okay.
Greg?
Sure, yeah, I just, I think we gotta be clear about what our goals are in the short term, which is, again, to get the information out there. We have this presentation and the video. We've only done 2 meetings where we presented it to the select boards and FinComs. We need to do this again, and we need to do it for parents and the greater public and the students. If we can set up, set up a few meetings in January. We don't need a facilitator for that. We can run it the same way we did in the recently. Remember that our goal for this is to get to the point where we decide whether or not the towns want to move forward with this. It's not absolutely, we got to regionalize. It's do they want more information? That's the point of this grant. They're not going to know whether or not they want to regionalize without a regional agreement. That's the next step. Our job is not to convince them one way or the other. Our job is do we want to make that next step? I think it is. I think there's a general consensus that they want more information on this. That doesn't mean that we're saying, we may make a recommendation to say, look, we think it's in the best interest for them to regionalize. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, though. It just means that we got to move forward with a regional district agreement so that we can get that information to them over the next, year it's going to take.
2 years.
And the facilitator, in the meantime, while that is happening, a lot of the money that's being poured into facilitation and public relation is going to happen during that time, not between now and February.
Mhm.
So I think we need to be really clear about what the goal is between now and like mid-February, which is, that's not really what this grant's about. The grant is really more about, once we get the a sort of a general consensus as to where our towns sit, and that's our next step, is to go to school committees with this presentation and to the general public. It doesn't have to be a lot of meetings. We just are trying to get a general consensus right now.
And to that end, Greg, we can write an amendment now to get it down to the 125. And then after we get all that information, we can come back and amend it again if we, when we have perhaps more direction from the planning board as well as the feedback from the public. And then we can amend it again on how we'll proceed. And maybe that's when we actually do the RFQs.
I just didn't want us to lose our goal of, we spent the fall developing that PowerPoint and video, and it's not over. We have to send it out for the wide.
I think, Mike, you were next, and then Jane.
Okay, well, I guess maybe I'm a little confused at this point. I raised my hand because I wanted to say I thought Bill made an excellent point, that we're really talking about a two-part process, one of which is to share the information we already have, and the second part is to get feedback from the community on what they're thinking. And I kind of disagree with Deb. I think I'm just looking at my own experience. It's pretty common for me to go to a meeting or see a presentation or read something and not immediately know what all my questions or comments or concerns are. It sometimes takes me a while to figure out, and it can take time to do that. That may not be true of people in the general public who aren't that interested to begin with, but we're talking about groups like the town officials and PTOs and school staff and so on who are pretty interested. And I think we should expect them to come up with questions after the fact. One thing that concerns me in that two-part process, and this ties in a little to what Greg was saying, is that I think our presentation, I worked on it, Greg worked on it. I think it's good for what it does, which is to present what we think we found that's kind of fairly clear. One place where I'm thinking at this point it's a little weak, and this is partly based on the Berniston meeting, is in making clear how much we don't know about what a new region might look like and how it might work. And some of the questions in Berniston were pointed at that. Some of the questions in some of the meetings in Montague have pointed to that. And reading over the proposed RFQ, or the grant application, I would have liked to see more emphasis on that. To be quite seriously reading the grant application and then listening to Greg talk, I'm wondering why we even bother to go through this process of getting people's feedback, because we've already decided that we want to go ahead and write a regional agreement and figure out what a contract might look like for staff in a district, and then go back to the towns and say, here, you like this? Yes or no? And that's not, that's not a process that I'm particularly eager to follow, because I think we're kind of leapfrogging a number of big questions. I'm not sure what a good way, one of the reasons we didn't have more in our presentation on our slideshow is that we don't know, and it's kind of hard to know. I mean, we have a problem with kids choicing out of the district, more so in Gilmontague than Pioneer. How will the new district change that? We don't know. There are a number of questions like that that aren't directly related, won't be answered by coming up with a regional agreement, won't be answered by coming up with a teacher's contract. But I think are real questions that people should at least be aware of and consider in trying to decide, should we move forward with this? And whatever process we follow in the next few months, I'd like to try to get more of that out there, not to be negative, but just to say, this is a complex issue. There are a number of moving parts. We feel fairly sure about some of them, but we're a lot less sure about others. And here's what they are. And we would like to hear what people have to say, and see what happens.
Jane?
I've forgotten half of what I wanted to say, but what I remember, I agree that people don't come up with all of their questions when they're still in whatever session that they attend. And the next day and the next week, when their questions arise in their minds, I don't think they contact the authorities to get the answers. I think they called their neighbor that they went with and they said, how did you hear this? What do you think? And they talk about it among themselves. And that's how things get confusing, how rumors get started, how misinterpretations get expanded, because they don't go back to the source of the information with their questions. And I'm not picking on anybody, but I'm saying this from almost 90 years of experience. I think that it's important that we send out those emails to the select boards, to the school committees, and ask to be on their agendas tomorrow. Not next week, tomorrow. We don't need the facilitator for that. And the day after tomorrow, the RFQ should start to be written. Those things can happen simultaneously. We don't have to wait to talk to all of these people before we write up the RFQs. We should be concentrating on what we want in those RFQs. I'm really hitting you guys hard tonight because it's my last chance.
Well, you're gonna keep coming to meetings and offering your opinion.
No, I'm not,
right?
because no.
Jane, do you, if a letter went to the select boards of whoever, who then would go to that meeting? Because they're saying, we want to be on your agenda, and they say, okay, we'd like to see you next Monday. We meet every other Monday or Wednesday, whatever. The respective person would, for their towns, would go to the select board and
That would be my hope, that the if not all of the reps from this town could go, at least 2 of them would go.
shouldn't we have a
And
common
if 2 from the
theme
same town can't go, the one who can go should invite somebody else from this group to go with them.
Jane, should we have like a common theme or a common set of questions, at least, that we're asking? So we're
We're not
soliciting
asking
similar.
questions. We're there to see if they have questions and what input they have. If they
Oh,
don't,
I
if they don't
misunderstood
have any
then.
question, who do you think, what questions do you have that weren't answered? So we can put them on our list to research. Who in your community do you think we should especially try to have an outreach with? What suggestions do you have to give us? Do you think we should keep working on this? It's not too early to ask that question.
But once again, that's not up to the select board, that's up to the townspeople to
Well,
vote.
that's true, but the select board should have their opinion about that, and they should be able to say, how they think their town is reacting.
I'll be way out of line, Alan, but you can slap me on the wrist. But wouldn't it be interesting if we took a vote on this own board and saw what direction we were headed? Because we're asking select boards to do that, yet I don't know where this board is on that subject. So if we're still exploring it, that's fine. Then the select boards are still exploring it. But if we're asking them to come up with a statement of support or not, then I would ask this board to come up with a support statement.
Well, maybe it should be worded differently. Do you want to recommend that we continue, or, you know?
That was
are you-
our word.
Are you sorry that you put it on your annual meeting?
Jane, you said 4 questions and I came up with 3. You said, what suggestions do you have for us? You had, who do you think we should be meeting with? You have the controversial one of, do you think we should still be meeting, working on this? I'm not sure that's a good question, because that's what we were commissioned.
You don't
to
have
do.
to use all my suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah, but what was the
The other
4th
one was, who in your town do you think we should be contacting?
Yeah, I know, I read that one. Who do we contact? Do you think we should still be going forward? Who do you think, and what suggestions you have for us going forward? Oh, what questions did you have that you
Yes,
didn't get answered?
yes.
Okay. Okay,
Or not
Thank you.
what questions have occurred to you since our meeting? Since our presentation?
okay. Thank you. I was trying to think of them all. Okay.
And, if you don't want to go, if you don't want to ask to be on the agenda to do that, put it in an email. And let them respond
Yeah,
to the email and say in the email, these are the things we thought we should touch base with you about. And we are willing to come to one of your meetings if you want to invite us. But if you could supply this information, it would be very helpful to us. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I
Have a
like that
nice week.
approach. Yeah, no, I like that. I like a heads up through an email saying, we're trying to reach out. We'd like to come back to them again, something like that. And then we'd like to, be invited to one of your meetings so we can, get some more feedback. So, Greg and then Mike, and then we've got to figure out how to go to the next
Mike
one.
had his hand up first. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, Mike and then Greg.
Yeah, well, I think those are good suggestions from Jane. I'd like to say, though, that I don't want to restrict this to just saying to them, what questions do you have, with the idea that they're going to have questions and we're going to come up with answers. I'd like to include concerns that they have,
Yeah.
which may be things that we don't have answers for. I mean, I keep coming back to this idea that
I like
I
that.
think
changing it
we
to
sometimes
concern.
present ourselves as, we've studied this for a while. And if people, we're ready to answer people's questions. And I think that we are ready to answer some questions, but we are not ready to answer all people's questions. And we are not ready to allay everyone's concerns, or all the concerns that people might have. Some of those questions don't have answers, and I think we should be honest about that. And some of those concerns are real concerns that are valid concerns. Whether they're enough to say it should go one way or another way is another question. But I think that we should be careful about trying to present this as, you have questions, we have answers type thing. I think we really want to find out what people are thinking and to encourage them to look at what we've done and see the holes in it, as well as seeing all the work that has gone into it. Because we've done a lot of work, but I don't think we've anywhere near answered all the questions or discussed all the concerns that are out there. And I think we should just be honest about that. I'm not faulting us. I think we did as good a job as we could, but I think that's the reality.
I think,
Yeah, I got that point that you made. Jane, you want to finish that? and then
yeah,
go to
I just
Greg?
want to jump back in and say, how do I want to phrase this? What do you think we missed? What else do you think we should look at? Are there
Yeah.
other areas that we should look at? That's really what we're wanting to know, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let me write that down. Greg?
Yeah, no, I agree with that to a point. I think that we have to be careful. I think we actually have been very clear to the public that we don't have all the answers. I think we were very clear in the meetings with the select board and FinComs that on the financial side, I mean, we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things we don't know that only the future will bring. We don't know how parents will react. We don't know if there will be backlash in one direction or another. But I also think that we need to be clear that we've had a lot of conversations over things that have been brought up that such as maybe we should go bigger. Well, we've had a lot of conversations about, well, who would that entail? I mean, what districts would realistically would want to join in on this? And two, politically, how feasible is that? I mean, there's many hurdles that get put in the way, and that this is the reality that we were charged with, which was 6 towns for very specific reasons, which are these are the 2 districts that are suffering the most from low and declining enrollment. And I think we've been very clear about that. I think that concerns will always be there right up until the point where if we choose to go forward, there will be concerns right up until the town's vote that we can't necessarily address. They're concerns that are going to be fears or, and I'm not saying they're not valid concerns. I think they are, but I also don't think there's much we can do to address concerns. I think we have to just present the information that we have come up with. And I think we have definitive conclusions regarding the educational programming. I think the financial realities are much more questionable. We have Warwick being a question mark. And, those kind of things are not going to be as clear until there would be some sort of regional agreement. So, I think it's kind of a catch-22 to be able to have more conclusions on the financial piece means more information that's going to have to come from a district agreement. I think, we're all pretty much on board with the educational benefits. And I think that's the information we have to keep putting out there. I don't know what bigger issues that you're talking about, Mike. I think a lot of those have been discussed, in terms of shared services, bigger regions, and we've talked about them. I mean, what can we offer to the public in that? I mean, we've been charged and we were formed to look at this particular 6-town region for a reason, which is that the 2 regions are suffering low and declining enrollment. And that's, it's not really because of choicing in and or out. A lot of it has to do with our population's getting older. Our population is not increasing in this area. And, we've lost a lot of students, not just from choice in, but just choice out, but just from population decline. So
Exactly.
Alan,
I just don't want to see us get bogged down again. That's all. I don't want to see us get bogged down in the weeds when we've done 3 years of pretty extensive research.
Alan, I don't
Yes,
have
Greg.
the yellow hand, so I apologize. And this is once again my concern, and Greg just said it, the language of it all matters as to how we put something out there. And when we ask select boards, do you have any questions? I think that's our, do you have any other questions? As soon as you put the word concern in there, concern has a negative connotation. And like Greg said, we've studied this, the educational benefits of it, certainly, that most of us agree on, that I don't think we need to be putting a negative spin on it. I think when you say, what questions do you have to the select board? It can be a concern, it could be a positive, it could be whatever it wants to be. But when you use the word concern, it has this negativity to it that I think we have spent 3 years on. And I think we just need to move on to, do you have any other questions? Ask us, we'll try to find the answers and push on. We want to keep moving forward. And as Greg said, I don't want to go 10 steps back again. I want to just keep moving forward. Put it in the positive, keep moving forward.
Yeah, let me just comment on that. We did debate even that word, and I've kind of moved off in terms of, there may be some challenges that they see that would be good to be brought to our attention. And I think we sort of use that word in its place, are there any challenges that you foresee that we should be paying attention to? Possibly that's a way to ask them to identify things. I don't know if that's positive or negative, but I do agree concern seems to have a negative connotation.
Yeah.
Let's Mike, and then if anyone new wants to contribute, we can go to the next item. Steve, were you going to say something? Because I
I
You
saw
lit
that
up.
Mike was speaking and he was muted, so I don't know if I don't want to step on him.
Oh, go ahead.
I didn't
Steve.
mute.
Yeah, I was going to share, I have some obligations here that I'm going to have to sort of step away and attend to right now. But, one of the interesting things to me is there's a lot of different ways to communicate information. And it seems right now like, the group has a lot of information, and some of it you feel pretty firm and secure in, and some of it you don't, right? And I guess I'll just leave you with the idea of, when you have these public communications, floating it as it is not the opinion of this committee that this is what we should do, but floating the concept as a straw man proposal, right? Like, so you're putting the proposal out there, you're saying, the premise here is that we are going to do this. And we have done research, and the research suggests that it will have these beneficial impacts in terms of educational programming and extracurricular programming. And we believe those, are the most likely kinds of impacts to affect enrollment and keep the students who are available in our districts, regions, associated with the districts. And we acknowledge that we don't have the answers. We know it's not going to be less expensive. It may impact different communities differently, depending on, various characteristics. But the most important question that I can ask you today as a viewer is, do you buy into this? Is this the direction we should be considering? Do you believe that we should, spend the effort or take the risk of possibly having this, cost more or be more difficult, because this is the best available solution that we see? And let that, having a proposal, having it framed as a proposal, even if there are sort of, clear disclaimers that it's for the purpose of the exercise, gets people to answer and address and present concerns, display cultural and community values that they might have that, will get in the way, et cetera. There is a part of me that believes that you have probably as much information as you can get. And the most important information for you to get as we start to turn this corner is, do you believe? Is what we do know convincing and compelling enough to make you really want more and want to invest in this, in the study and in the initiative? Do you see the risk of not doing it? Is another way to frame it. So I don't know when I'll next get to join your committee. I want to thank you so much for giving me any space. I don't deserve it, but I wanted to just sort of share those thoughts, because I can hear you all wrestling with the challenge of sharing information, because people are all overloaded with information. You did a great job, presenting to our select board, but they've had to read like 800 pages of information and hear 75 different proposals in those few short weeks that have elapsed. And so, yeah, I just want to share all that. Thank you so much. And I'm going to sign out now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Bye for now.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, Mike, and then should go to probably what people are interested in hearing.
Well, I'd like to, I guess I don't see concerns as being entirely negative. Concerns are real. And when Greg said that there are concerns that we can't address, I don't think we need to address concerns, but I think it's important to acknowledge them. And I disagree that we as a committee have done a great job of acknowledging all the concerns that are out there. I think that we have discussed a number of them, but we haven't discussed them very much. And the discussions have been, quite frankly, along the lines of what Greg just said, where somebody will say, well, here's my thoughts on all that. And that's the end of it. I think there are some real concerns with this. The big one being, is it sustainable? I don't think a regional agreement, getting that nailed down, will answer that question. I'm not sure there is a way to answer that question ahead of time. But I personally think it's a real concern, because you can have all the great potential educational benefits in the world, but if your district isn't going to survive, it doesn't matter. And I also disagree with what Steve just said, just the one thing that he said, that this is we have studied this matter and this is the best alternative. This is the alternative we were asked to study, and we agreed pretty early on that we were not going to look at other alternatives. And Steve, Greg has made the case a couple of times that to do so would simply take more time and be logistically hard, and seems to imply that that's a reason to go with this one rather than considering other ones. I'm not convinced at this point that this is the best alternative. And I'm a big believer that it's never too late to stop going down the wrong path. So I may be a minority on this board, and that's fine with me. We're all here because we have different perspectives, and I hope we all get to share them. But I don't think, I was concerned when the gentleman got up at the Bertelsmann meeting and said, I think this is a slam dunk. I didn't take it as being just putting the education, and that everybody understood that there were other areas where it isn't a slam dunk. I think he thought in his mind, this idea is a slam dunk. And I don't think that the work we've done points in that direction. So, and I think that it would take a bigger meeting to talk about all these issues that have been raised. And here we are, Deb wants to just keep going forward. I think we need to talk about what forward really is at some point, but I don't know if we will.
Well, I'll just quickly respond. I'm the chair, but it's the planning board that decides on things. My thought on that was, I thought the whole reason we were doing this outreach and getting information and soliciting, so that sometime, maybe it's in April, that I can bring that to this planning board and say, okay, I think it's time to take a vote one way or the other. Are we in agreement that we should move forward with this and go to the next step and make a recommendation to the towns? Let's move forward. Or are we as a planning board going to recommend that we not? At some point, we're going to have to solidify where we stand. Maybe I'm seeing that process differently, but we can't go into we can't end up in town meetings where, well, some people think it's a good idea, some people don't. We as a committee, as a planning board, we're charged with making a recommendation, And I think we agreed we need a lot more information and public input, sharing and soliciting before we'll be at that point. And I'd like to at least get some feedback on, do people see that as what we're doing now? Because if not, I need to adjust my thinking. Because at some point, I think we do have to take a vote.
I agree.
I'm not sure I know what your specific question is.
All right, Jane, I saw her say agree. Jane, in other words, we're doing a lot of this work and we're doing the outreach and we're going to solicit information. We're doing this so that we as a planning board can eventually, in my opinion now, be able to take a vote of the planning board to see if people are on board to continue forward, because we feel we should be recommending this to the town, but there are other things that need to be done to present to the town. Via, for example, a regional agreement. So at some point, we need to say, we did all this research. We don't really think it's a viable solution, or we think it has enough merit that we can recommend this and let the towns decide. So I saw that as our role. Len seemed to agree, Deb seemed to agree. Bill, where do you on this? What do you feel eventually we need to decide where we are as a planning board on bringing this forward? Bill?
Yeah, I
Kind of go
do.
around.
I do think we need to decide. I also think that in the presentations, it would be totally fair to present any concerns that this committee might have, or individuals, which would give Mike a chance to bring forward what he thinks are areas of concern. That's not necessarily negative. It's a valid conversation that you're showing the public that it's not a slam dunk. Perhaps, but maybe not. But beyond that, I think that we can take a vote at any time to ask the select boards to present to take a vote to express either our agreement that we should move forward or not. And then that's the recommendation I assume we would be making to the select boards. And then the select boards can decide also whether they want to proceed and say, no, we don't want to do it, or yes, we will. I don't think that our recommendation is going to necessarily create votes on town meeting floor, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that last piece a little bit, whether I have to go back and look at our charge. If our charge was to make a recommendation, I guess I've lost the concept of, is our charge to make a recommendation to the towns or to the select boards? Obviously, the select boards control the agenda and decide what goes on and what doesn't, unless there's a certain percent of people that ask for it to be on. So let me think about that a little more, Bill. But you make
Yeah,
some
I'm
good
pretty
points.
sure
Alan, I think it's spelled out in the law.
Yeah, it's to bring it to the towns.
I think that tactically what we do is we make a recommendation to the select boards,
Yep.
Put it
either
on.
not to proceed, or if we recommend to form a new region, we do so with a proposed regional agreement. And the select boards are then required to call town meetings in the
Mhm.
respective towns to vote on the question of whether to form a regional agreement.
Yep.
And Alan, to get back to your earlier question, I think you described pretty much what I'm thinking is supposed to happen. In general terms,
Mhm.
the point I'm trying to make is, in getting feedback at this point, I'd like to get as broad feedback as possible about what people are really thinking. Because I think it's going to be an awful lot of work to come up with a regional agreement and contract for, staff and whatever else
The
we decide that we need to come up with.
CBS.
And I don't, I'd like to, if this committee decides to go ahead with that, and I'm not sure I'll be part of it after next June. My term is up at that point, and I think I'm likely to step down, and hopefully somebody else from Montague will want to step up. And if nobody else from Montague wants to step up, I see our new member from the Gil Montague School Committee is not here tonight. Then that to me tells me something about whether the town of Montague actually cares enough to make this happen. But if this committee wants to go ahead, I don't see a point in doing a whole bunch of work if it's going to come to town meetings and one or more town meeting is going to say, no, we don't want to do this. So I'd like to try as hard as possible to find out now, given the fact that we don't have complete information, and we don't have as good information as we will have down the road, but to get a sense of whether it's worth it to do all that work. Because I'm sure everybody has other things to do. I know I do.
All right, Lynn, your hand was up and it's now down, and I just want to remind, we're right around 8 o'clock and we have another discussion to be had. I like to end around 8:30. People have to get up early. So, do you, Lynn, did you have a comment you'd like to make or idea?
I did think that Steve spoke, I think, some really valid words. And I think he offered us a positive way forward. So I think that we need to decide among ourselves, as he suggested, all of us, to give that kind of feedback right here. And then see where we go from there, because I think, as Mike is saying, people are getting a bit weary. He's getting a bit weary. And I think while we have a really good group, probably some of the most talented, probably people that we can find, I think we should take advantage of that and see if we can, as they say, carpe diem.
So piggybacking off of that and to sort of move on to the next item, maybe what we should be thinking about is when we're building our calendar of getting the word out, solicitation, and all the work that we're doing in the next several months, that we put on our calendar at least a tentative date or a somewhere close to a date on, we as a board take a vote. Are we going to be recommending to be going forward so that we can have more direction? And then it rolls back into Steve's point about, we think this is a viable option that the town should consider. I think that's always the part I always frame it in my own mind is there enough to this that it's worthy of consideration by the towns, and let them decide. And we give them as much information as we have. So Greg, you want to wrap up? If you're on mute, your hand is up. Do you intend, did you?
Well, no, I was just going to add, to Mike's point, I honestly have not heard a valid alternative to this. I mean, Mike, you brought up, let things stay the way they are and let, Pioneer go down and have to tuition the kids. How long do you expect that would take? I mean, realistically, the reason of what I'm saying is that financially sustainable is one thing. And I sort of get the sense that when you say sustainable, you're meaning financially sustainable. What I don't hear is, I have not heard of a valid alternative to this. I have not, how are we going to regionalize bigger in a way that is actually realistic? Or two, if we keep things the way they are, we now have two very small districts, very small high schools that are very low, low enrollment and all the challenges that go with that and that they're facing currently. I don't see that changing. I don't see, I mean, it took us 3 years to get to this point. How much longer, if we scrap this now, what's the alternative? What's the timeline for that? And how long do our students have to wait? That's my question. So, I mean, I just don't have those answers, and those might come up as the concerns, but we have talked about those things because again, I don't see I see the political hurdles too great for some of the suggestions that have come up in the past. And two, I don't see the other districts that are close by as being interested in joining in on this. So I don't know. I mean, I'm throwing it out there because this is the present, this is what we were presented. It may have come from Michael Sullivan, but that came from a superintendent with decades of experience in looking at the situation and living in this area. I mean, working in this area and sort of analyzing, what the area challenges were. And I think it's a good proposal. It's not perfect. And it may have to go further down the line if they so choose to regionalize, but I haven't heard a realistic proposal out there that I think is any more valid than what we've got on the table, but I'm all ears.
So Jane, since you haven't talked a little bit and you're thinking of being in the last meeting, I think I'm going to have you be the last person to talk here. And I will put it back on the agenda because, it's obviously we're not done having this discussion. And so we can make this an agenda item. We've spent a long time on it, and rightfully so. Jane?
I just want to add to what Greg said, that my biggest concern is the education that we're giving our children. And I feel like it is inadequate at the moment, and it's only going to get worse. With lowering population, teachers aren't going to stay to teach 3 kids and have to teach the same subject. I don't know. I don't want to go off the deep end here, but I think education needs to be foremost here. A good education, and not just basics with pretty little things added on the side to make it look attractive. I'm sorry. I'm really concerned about the education of our students, and my student population, my personal student population right now is great-grandchildren.
Yep.
And they're in grammar school and entering high school. Well, one of them already graduated from college, so I guess I don't have to worry about him. But the others are younger and they're still coming up. Fortunately for me, none of them live in this district. But I hope that as I leave you, and I'm wondering if I am leaving you because I see your new member didn't join tonight. I hope you'll keep education in the forefront, because whatever happens with finances, if this looks like it's going to be more expensive to have a joint district, I encourage you to go back and look at the districts as they are now and tell me how you think they're not going to get more and more expensive. They'll be even more expensive than a joint district, in my opinion. I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. And Jane, I hope we see you at the next meeting. You have a lot to contribute, however you choose to participate. The good news is you may not be required to. she may have had a conflict. Greg, you sent her a link, I assume, and hopefully she tried to get in. She indicated she was going to try to join us, so. All right, so Karen brought up, I guess we'll put this under any other business that wasn't anticipated, because I don't think we anticipated
Okay.
this. So I'll just give a brief review of what I thought, but I think there were different perspectives, and I will own up to a couple of those. So the first thing is, when this was on the agenda, I wanted to share with the committee that, there's a need to, to have this as a topic. Karen was, I appreciated her comments about how important it is for the school committee to hear more about the six-town, planning board's progress. She reminded the committee that we were trying to have this on the agenda as updates and for information, and that hasn't happened. And more of that has to happen going forward. And she pointed out that the presentation that we have should be seen by the both school committees sooner than later. I reviewed that I had set up a meeting. I talked to Kathy Hawkins and reached out to the principal, and a meeting was set up for this. And I spoke to Cooper Bullock, he's an amazing kid, and I think he's a senior class president. And he's been involved in a number of initiatives, and I spoke with him, and he was pretty excited about, thankful that we were going to include the students, and I explained to him that, and to the committee, that this is intended to be a meet and greet, and introduce myself, introduce what the planning board had been working on, but it wouldn't be, and that after the winter break, the plan was we were going to amend, if we needed to, the grant to provide transportation, to have the Pioneer students go to Turners Falls and vice versa, and have a facilitator, engage students in a conversation now that they've had, some information about talking about what they see as, what possibilities do they see if the districts were to merge, what would they want us to be thinking about? What issues would they want us to be, addressing? And I'm talking in general now, and that could be very, very powerful. When I came into the meeting and I talked to Cooper, he actually showed me the room that we'd be meeting in, and talked to, we kind of reviewed again, because I wanted him to know this. Oh, and then there was something Miller, Emily Miller had said something about in preparing the students for the meeting, should we be, what questions might they have? So I reiterated, no, this isn't that type of meeting. This isn't like sharing and trying to solicit feedback. This is just giving them a heads up that we want to include the meeting. Here's some of a little bit about the planning board. Here's some of the work we're doing. And we're looking forward to doing a presentation and soliciting their feedback after the winter break. So then I moved off until carrying forward something that came up at the meeting in terms of where the Pioneer superintendent stood. And I guess I started to getting into murky waters there, because I think the question that I was asking was making her feel I was backing into a corner, and that, people are wanting to know, what your thoughts are, or however I worded it. I think, put her sort of on the defense. In my mind, I was thinking that it was an opportunity to say, for her to say, well, anytime you're looking at alternatives for students or what might be possible, that we should be working together, and we should be exploring all options, including, and there was an opportunity to talk about what she was looking at the school, but we could agree that, this should be a partnership. And I think because of the way I worded it, it was more like, where are you standing on this, for her to take a position of, I support your work or I don't support your work. And that was had to be, I assume, a poor choice of words on my part, because that's, in my mind, I believed, I thought I knew how she would answer that. I didn't expect the answer to be, I work for the school committee, I don't work for the 6-town regional planning board. And so I take my direction from the school committee. That did bother me, and perhaps I shouldn't have let me, because my thinking is that the school committee is represent the towns form the committee, and there shouldn't have to be permission or whatever from the school committee to be involved in exploring what options might be. I may have used the word, we're looking for your support or your involvement, but I may have used support. And again, words do make a difference. And so support may have been, we're looking for you to support what we're doing, as opposed to helping us to get communication out to parents, or having it on the website so that people would be able to see, be able to go to see the work that we're doing, because it's all about sharing information. I asked her, well, is it on the website? Because she is pretty much, I think she's great at getting information and having the website be friendly and a lot of information. She said she didn't know. I thought that we had already, that was already there. So it started to become contentious, and that I sort of dug in about, well, if it's important to the towns and the towns formed us, it's your part of your role as superintendent to be working with us and having a partnership. So I did have a follow-up conversation with Raina about how she may have interpreted how I approached that. Karen, being present and hearing how that rolled out, I would like to hear what your thoughts are, and I'd also like to hear Raina's thoughts, because you were there and watched it unfold. Raina eventually, by the way, full disclosure, had to sort of come in because I thought I was going to do about a 5-minute review, and it ended up going about 20 minutes because there then became a back and forth dialogue with the superintendent and I. But it did sort of get to, well, we can agree that we need to work together in partnership on looking at alternatives or what might be the best interest of students. So I think we ended on more of a positive note, but I guess that's Raina came in and sort of saved the day there. So Karen, you want to go first and then Raina second?
Well, I supported your getting it out on in front of the school committee that it's come up at various meetings that they haven't really heard from our superintendent, and the people, the select boards and the people who were there at the Bernardston meeting thought they should know about that. And I thought it interesting that the whole idea that we might have to vote to ask her to be a participant, that didn't make any sense to me. I think we should expect that she would be involved in, as other people have said tonight, potential solutions to the issue of a declining enrollment. The fact that we have a few more students than last year at Pioneer is a very good sign. But it's not huge, and we have to really think about the future as a school committee. And so new initiatives within the schools, that's great, but we have to look deeply. And so I supported what you said, and I hope that, my personal hope is that she will attend some of the meetings or at least watch them on the online from the website so that she can become more familiar with what it is we're actually doing.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, I disagreed when someone said, well, then we should take a vote to direct her to do that. I disagree wholeheartedly. I think that's inappropriate for the
Yeah.
superintendent has the responsibility to navigate that political field that, you know, you're in, as well as looking at the best interest of kids. So it's tough being a superintendent, that's for sure. Raina.
So I think I took her comment a little bit differently. I think she felt that you were asking her to focus her energy on further regionalization as this, you know, to focus her time and energy on the work that this planning board is doing and to not do the exploring that she's planning to do right now. And the vote was not, you know, I need your authorization to find out what the 6-town planning board is doing. I need your vote to say, don't do the other year of learning that I've got planned. Don't be doing these other, you know, focus your energy on what the 6-town planning board is doing.
Raina, did I ever use any words that said you shouldn't be focusing on yours? I actually said we should be looking at a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, whatever those plans may be. And that we should be working in partnership and sharing information. So I can't imagine how she could come away that I was, I don't know how I could have framed that differently.
Well,
I
took it differently. So I think, you know, she did feel that you were asking her to sort of give an opinion and on regionalization, on the work that we're doing, you know, and take a stand, which, you know, as it's been discussed tonight, this committee hasn't taken a position on what we should be doing. We're still in the exploring phases. We haven't, you know, we haven't come to a consensus. And I think she felt that you were asking to make it a, you know, to form an opinion and take a stand. So, you know, that's not her role. It's not what she should be doing. So that was my take on it. So that's all.
Well, I'll own that if I mean, I can't imagine. Did you get that sense, Karen, that I was
No,
suggesting?
no. I think you were just looking for some level of involvement, some
Yeah.
level. And people generally don't feel there's been any.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be careful because it's tough being a superintendent, and
Yeah.
you need to know how to navigate
Mhm.
when there are initiatives out there that that might be contrary to how she's thinking, but you can support looking at different alternatives and should not be threatened. Bill, you're next, and then Jane.
Yeah, you're talking over and over about the same thing, and I don't think it can rework the conversation you had. But all of that aside, I've stated to you and Greg, I know before, and I fully respect the autonomy of school districts. And she is absolutely correct. She works for the school committee. She doesn't work for anybody else. And I have my feelings about her involvement or non-involvement, but that aside, she is a superintendent of an autonomous entity, and it's up to the school committee to introduce this stuff to themselves. So you need to be talking just within the school committee, not necessarily to the superintendent, because the superintendent, I think, is trying to develop a system that she thinks is excellent educational opportunity for the students along the lines of, I've just come to this feeling in the last week or so, that it must be along the lines of, she's thinking that if a charter school can make it as a small unit, then she should be able to do it too. And how can she fashion that together? That's just a guess on my part. But I don't think that you should be taking any umbrage from any reaction that the superintendent has. You need to focus on getting the school committee involved just to get some information so that they don't need to get it from the superintendent. They need to get it from us. And that's the bottom line to me in this, for this whole conversation for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But thanks. That's all I got to say for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jane,
I just wanted to mention that when Tanya was the financial director, whatever, I've forgotten her title, she attended most of these meetings. And I don't know that we have even invited Jordan to attend.
Mm.
And
Good
I think we need to do that. Tanya certainly was very helpful and pretty responsive, not always quite as fast as we wanted, right, Mike? But she was responsive to the finance committee's needs and the what's their name? The professionals that we had working on our spreadsheets.
Abraham's.
Right, Abraham, thank you. So anyway, I think Jordan needs to be invited, and I also want to mention that the prior superintendent at Pioneer sought a vote from the school committee and got the vote saying that he should pay attention to this committee. I would have to go back and find the minutes to know exactly how it was worded. But I do remember that the school committee took a vote that he should have an involvement here. So one of my takes on that is that it didn't apply just to him, it applied to the superintendency, whoever was in that seat. So if you have to take another vote, I think you should take another vote. Certainly we expect that superintendents will seek out and attend and be involved in anything that they think will help their district. And I think that if the school committee thinks that a superintendent is missing something, it is their responsibility to see how they can change that. Thank you.
thank you. Great.
Yeah, well, I'm getting tired, so
Yeah.
my I'm still a little bit on the tail end of this thing. But no, Bill, I would disagree with you on that. The school committees are not autonomous. They're autonomous in the same way that assessors are autonomous, but they're connected to the town. They have to work in partnership with the select boards. You have to get, you have to set your tax rate, all that kind of stuff. The same thing is true of the school committee. They don't raise their own taxes. They don't self-fund their schools. So, it's just understood that superintendents, that's why they show up at annual town meetings. They have a responsibility to work in partnership with the towns. They don't just report to the school committees. Otherwise, why would they bother showing up for annual town meetings? There's a certain political process, and again, their autonomy is overseeing the operations of the school district. It's not, right? So there is a broader topic, which is, the towns themselves coming together to form this board to look at the bigger picture. And that is not a separate thing. It's just not. So she, and to give you an example, Brian Beck has no problem participating in our meetings without without a vote coming down from the Montague School Committee. They have been very cooperative with us. They have reached out to us. They have been in communication with us. I think to Karen's point, it's right on. I have sent an invitation to every meeting, and maybe she will watch this meeting, and I will say it again. I've sent out an invitation to Superintendent Kinsella for every meeting we have. The invitation is always there. She did happen to reach out to us after the last meeting. I think that's no coincidence. It must have gotten back to her that we're not happy. I'm not happy, and I'm speaking as a select board member. And I'm speaking as a select board member that's not even in her district, but is doing a ton of work on behalf of the Pioneer Valley District. I'm doing it for their students. It's just a matter of respect.
I don't disagree with you.
So it's not, they're not autonomous. They're not fully autonomous. They don't have their own, they're not self-funded. They have to run their budgets through town meetings. It's a partnership. It always is. I mean, the elected positions are,
Greg, that's not worth getting into in this discussion, really.
No, but my point is the greater conversation is one that moves beyond the school committee, and the superintendent absolutely is a liaison between towns and school committees. That's part of their job. So, and I say that after 9 years of having conversations with superintendents as a select board member, and having to have that conversation between school committees and select boards. It's always a partnership. So yeah, she can focus that they can walk and chew gum. They can look at what's best for the district if the towns decide not to go that route, and they can also be cooperative in allowing the town to explore Plan B, as Alan pointed out. So I'm getting very tired. I'm going to have to sign off soon, just because.
I'm going to wrap this up, Craig, because I want to pick a date. So I want to wrap this up. But I thank Jane for all the work that you've done, Jane. If we don't see you, you've been amazing. I also want to thank you for the suggestion about Jordan. You're right. If we have not sent him an invitation, thank you for that, because we will make sure, and I will reach out to him to have him know that we welcome him. And I will continue to work with the superintendent, Kinsella, because it's important that we are all working together on behalf of the kids. I'm looking at January 10th. The 3rd's too soon. The 10th, we should have some information, and we should, those people are going to get contact information to Greg. People can be working on the minutes, so that's something we could clear out if we had those in advance, so we could clear the deck on those if possible. And then we can continue the conversation of what we can do and how we will organize ourselves to get that work done. So this has been, I just love our meetings, and that the perspectives are just some, there's common, and then we grow our strength from our diversity and from our point of views, even if they appear to be in conflict. It spars the thinking. So can people make Tuesday, January 10th? Bill, when you're in your cycle of every other Tuesday, how does that fall?
General, that has a conflict. The 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of every month. In December, it changed because of Christmas.
So would it be better if it was the 17th?
I don't have anything on the 17th. Yeah, that would be better for me, but that may not be good for everyone else.
Well, we're going to do some stuff in between, and we can, I can send out some contact to the select board, and, give people an update of the work that we have generated from ideas this evening. And if the people that are doing that'd be you, Karen, the 13th and the 6th and the 13th, a lot of meat of what we talked about is in those. That would be helpful to a day or two before our meeting to help us to kind of organize, refresh our memories, because some time will have gone by.
Yeah, can I
So-
say it at least a couple of days before? I don't like getting things the day of the meeting.
I can't, no.
Okay,
And a reminder, I was doing the 6th, not the 13th, not tonight.
yeah, I'm sorry, I must have said that wrong, yes.
But
and
that's
Greg's
fine.
doing-
In the meantime, can we get on the agenda for school committee to make the presentation?
So Raina, can you try to get that on the 12th agenda, January 12th? We can talk about it this Thursday.
Yeah, I'll look at what we've got for the January agendas and either the 12th or the 19th.
And if you think that requires it, we could have a dedicated, hour and a half meeting or whatever, just focused on this. You could have a special meeting and you could ask people that question. Because sometimes we have the 12th and then we don't need the 19th. So if we can get things done on the 12th, then we could fall into that slot that when we don't usually meet necessarily on the following Thursday.
It's budget time though, I.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a, yeah, it's,
All right, we'll see what you can do about the 12th. And we
Well,
can
about Gil
talk
Montague.
about. Pardon?
How about Gil Montague?
How about Gil Montague?
It's on our agenda and I already have planned to bring an update next Tuesday at our meeting. And my first question would be, when can I get access to the PowerPoint so that we can schedule it? That's all I need to learn.
Okay, so we just need to update the slides. Greg has had COVID and been under the weather. So when the slides are updated, we
Slides
could
are updated.
get
It's
those
just
to
that
Bill.
The slides are updated. I've run into one little glitch, which is Deb Potte's narration over the slide, the
24.
assessment slide. Yeah, it's just that she says FY22 and I'm trying to get rid of it. I'm gonna have to go back to the original audio in a different platform and like cut it out and re-edit it. And so it's taking me a little longer. The slide's done. It's already in the video. It's just that I just ran into one little where she says FY22. I got rid of it in one place. I thought I was done. And then she says it again. And like, so now if I just cut it out, it sounds funny. So now I've got to figure out how to make the edit. She doesn't have to come back again because she didn't.
Greg, I have no,
Want to come here.
I have no objection. Yeah, I have no objection to you doing the script for that one slide.
Yeah, it's
None at
just
all.
it's taking out the FY22, so she doesn't say that because it says FY23.
Yeah. Or you just do that slide if that is easier.
Yeah,
All right, so we have January 17th, 6:30. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I do want to say again how much I appreciate the time that you've given into this. Time and effort, and people aren't getting paid. You're doing this because you care about the kids, and to me, there's not a nobler cause. So I thank you.
Add a quick one
Is
though.
there
Will
a-
Bill bring the slide presentation to Gil Montague on January 10th? If he wants a date.
Well, he's going to ask.
I know, so
That's up to.
is January 10th a workable date?
It could be.
Okay.
All right.
Alan, one quick thing.
All right. Is there? Yes.
I can set up a Zoom link for the 17th,
Wonderful.
but I think it's time to start thinking about having someone else do Zoom.
Yeah.
So
Anyone
I don't
else
know
have access? Yeah. Anyone else have access to that? Were they are a subscriber?
Nope.
All right. We'll be thinking about that, Mike. Thanks for the heads
Okay.
up.
license is $160 for a year.
but the cost of the license in one of those grant line items.
Right.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Or
Good
take
suggestion,
take a
Jane.
collection, get $10 from everybody on the board.
No.
Whatever.
Jane's right on. We'll put it in the grant. Absolutely, to conduct our meetings.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah, why not? All right, is there a motion for the greater cause here?
I move.
I
It
so
is-
move.
I'll second.
So Karen moved, Len seconded at 8:41 on a motion to adjourn. Mike, how do you vote?
Mike Naughton, aye.
And Greg,
I,
Karen,
Yes.
Jane?
Yes, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Len?
Aye. And I did
Raina?
want to say, thank you
Go
for
ahead.
how you handle these things.
We're a team. We're a team. Raina?
Yes.
Christie?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Deb?
Yep.
And Alan Genovese votes yes. All right.
See
Night
you next
all.
time.
Good night to
night.
all. Yep.
you.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.